now. Hello and welcome once again to the 10th annual online EMCON 2020 Anime Fest with another live panel courtesy of the East Meadow Public Library in Long Island, New York, with voice actors, directors, producers. They do it all. They do it all except for draw the animation. It is Brittnay Lauda and Matt Shipman. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
So as I was telling everybody before, if there's anybody who has a question, make sure you guys type it in the group chat. It's a little button that says chat, and you can type it in there, and all the questions, and I will read them. But until then, I'll just have some fun with Matt and Brittnay. All right, so I guess the most important question is, let's just hit the highlights. What you guys are most famous for, and we'll take it from there.
That's a way to word it.
Yeah.
Huh? Most famous for. I feel like I haven't heard that before.
More popular roles include Dr. Stone, where I play Yuzurika. I'm wearing my Dr. Stone shirt. They have him at Hot Topic now, which is really cool. I'm Ichigo and Darling in the Franxx. Rico and Maiden Abyss. What else is popular? I always start forgetting things at this point. Cowgirl and Goblin Slayer. I'm Audrey and Honey Pop. I'm in Yandere Simulator. I'm in Smite. I'm in Maple Story. Yeah.
Holy crap, I should have asked what you're not famous for.
Hey, I'm Matt Shipman. I guess, I don't know, what's the top one now? I want to start with that. I'm Inasa and three other named characters in My Hero Academia. I'm Chrome and Dr. Stone, Flock and Attack on Titan, Hiro and Darling in the Franxx, Shay and Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. More, but those are kind of the heavy ones that I always say at the top. So yeah, those. And I mean, I do some script adaptation for anime as well, and Brittnay directs
some stuff.
So yeah.
Like I said, you guys do it all except for draw the actual animation. So I guess my first question would be, you guys are married, so is that a benefit or a detriment to working in anime? So like Brittnay is like, every job, do you have to go to Matt first because he's right there, or not at all?
Like when it comes to like casting and stuff,
Yes.
No, I don't, the last thing I think I cast you in was Galactic Heroes.
Yeah, and that was how many, like
2018.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes I mean, just because it's an easy pick doesn't mean it's the right pick.
Yeah.
So and we have a lot of like really talented friends of ours that I haven't gotten to work with yet. So Matt's not always the immediate person I go to.
There's also situations where like a client might be like, I don't know, they could see that as like, oh, what if she's just picking her husband?
Yeah.
So like
yeah.
we kind of tried to avoid that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I even get like side eye when it's like, that person's your friend. Is that really okay to cast them?
Everyone we work with.
I'm like, yeah, really. Like I work with all these people I work with, I'm friends with. So, but no, just because we're married doesn't mean we're immediately working with each other. The only complication I can see is now that we're working from home in the pandemic, we have like a big booth right behind this computer. We have to organize our recording around each other.
Right.
So we both are in a new show that isn't announced yet, where we play significant parts, and trying to plan around that is like, okay, well, I have 5 hours and you have 5 hours and we can't work this day and we can only work, they need it by this day. So like one of us will have to take that early morning session.
Right. That was me last time. I took the early morning session.
Yeah, so that's like harder to plan around. I can say.
So it's like sugar bathroom race, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of.
Whereas like, if it was normal times and we went into a studio, it would be like, she could record for one show in one studio and I could record for another in the other at the same time, but we can't like this because we share the same booth now. So if she's using it, I can. If I'm using it, she can.
Same thing for like directing and stuff. Like I can't direct at the same time that Matt's recording, and like Matt writes and sometimes talks loudly while he's writing because you got to match the flaps. So
you got to perform the whole show as you're writing.
So it's like, I kind of have to plan around that too. So.
You actually mentioned that Matt does the adaptation for some of the work that he does. So, what do you actually know Japanese so you can actually hear the original story, or do you just get notes on where you want the story to go, and then you got to write it in to fill it that way?
So my job, I do know a very little bit amount of Japanese. We have a class tomorrow. We take weekly. Tomorrow morning at noon, I think, for 2 hours. Yeah. Now it's on Zoom. It used to be in person. Um, uh, what I'm given as the like adaptive scriptwriter is I'm given a translation document and a document that is like the template for my script, which basically has all the information that is needed aside from the actual dialogue, meaning like cue number, character name, time code, like exactly when in the video the character's mouth opens or something like that, or when the sentence comes in. And my job is to take that translation and adapt it so that one, it sounds like something an English speaker would actually say, because a lot of times direct translations don't, especially between Japanese and English. They're very different languages. And two, match the visuals. So if the character's mouth is only moving and the sentence is super long, I have to find a way to try to express that long idea within the confines of the time of just 3 quick mouth movements. So my knowledge of my, limited knowledge of Japanese absolutely helps because, for example, now I'm working on a show where the translation can be a little iffy, but I also reference like the source material. In this case, it's a manga translation of another translator's version of this same scene, and I'll be like, oh, that makes more sense. Okay, how can I put this into the English script for the anime? But I'm not like writing story beats or characters. I'm taking the translation and making sure that it makes sense in English and comes out of the characters' mouths right.
Yeah, and when I directed Galactic Heroes, there was a lot of source material in that it was based on an old show. So I was able to, when like we got a translation, I was like, I don't really quite understand that, or like we need more information to fill in flaps. I was able to reference the old animated series and the books, which both have official English releases. So that was nice because then I kind of had 3 different sources I could look at, like the translation for the show I'm working on, the old translation of the old show, and then the book translation.
It's not to go off forever on this one thing, but translation is a very tricky thing. Like I just said, I know English and then I know a little bit of Japanese, but I'm not bilingual in any way. But like having the base knowledge of another language, I've read a lot and heard a lot about how I don't know what it's called, but the word for people who speak one language, typically the idea that we have in our heads about other languages is that it's like you can substitute word for word and just rearrange it maybe, and that's a sentence in like Spanish or in Japanese or something, and it's very much not that way. There's a lot of like implication that goes into the way things are said or the conjugation of a word and stuff. So it might sound a little weird to be like, well, why can't you trust the translation? It's not that it's inaccurate, it's just that it might be translated maybe too literally, so that some of the meaning is a little confused or too vaguely because they don't want to make assumptions. So it's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
So how far off have you gone from, like, how far have you gone off from the original translation? Like, has there been a time where like, well, this is not even close to this, but I have to do it to make it work for the story that you guys are telling?
I don't think I've had those instances.
It kind of depends on what you would consider like far off, if we're just talking about like, for example, one of the sentences that we hate that's in translations all the time, it's a Japanese phrase, shikatanai desho, and it can't be helped. And it's like, people in English say that sometimes, but not nearly as often as they do in anime. So like, you gotta have different go-tos depending on what the situation is. Like, my instinct is like, what are you gonna do? Or something like that.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah. So like those are different in that none of the words are the same, but it's a similar meaning. Our job is in adaptation or in directing, because you make changes to the script when you're directing as well, if something isn't working in the booth or something, is to tell the same story, just in our language.
Yeah.
So that might mean that the wording is a little different, but as long as the same idea is getting across, the point of the scene is the same and the characters are not behaving in a way that they wouldn't, then that's a successful adaptation.
Yeah. So that's when I said, like, I don't think I've had that situation, is that, like, even if I drastically change the words, the spirit and the, like, what is being conveyed remains the same.
Right. Yeah.
Like in Hensky, we changed a lot of jokes because, like, there's only so many times there you can say the word panties and it's still funny. So we like found other ways to say it and made that part of the humor. With World War Blue, I think is the show that I worked on that we took the most liberties with.
Right.
And that was written by someone, like the script was written by someone else, and they were very good at video game knowledge, and they found and tried to bring out even more the video game references in the original script or the like source material, which had like a lot of references to games and the animation and the manga storytelling. And so he just kind of like beefed it up and added additional references while still trying to tell the story. So at no point was the story changed. It was just like, oh, they're gonna make this joke based on a Sonic lyric now.
Right.
Okay. So you actually mentioned video games. So is it different working on a video game as opposed to anime, or is it basically just the same thing since you're just a voice?
Well, anime you have to match flaps. Video games you don't. For the most part.
Yeah.
Like I did have some flap matching I had to do for Maple Story, but like, or timing matching, but it was like pretty minor. And I did a JRPG not too long ago. That's not out yet, so I can't say anything else. But there was.
You can say it's an awesome game.
I hope it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't really know. But
It's awesome because you're in it. That's what you're supposed to say. It's awesome because I'm in it.
Well, but then us saying things are awesome is all meaning. We got to be
everything
real.
we're in it. It's awesome.
Our dog is here between us. She's very small, so you might not see her, but that's fine.
But that didn't have any like matching of flaps, but the Maple Story had like a little bit. And so like it becomes more like free, I guess, when you don't have to match the flap and you can kind of like act in whatever way you see fit. Whereas like in anime where we kind of have a little bit of a baked in idea of like, okay, well that character's like looking really wacky, so my read should be wacky, and the Japanese sounded wacky, and I have this many flaps to get across my idea, so I probably should be wacky, or like I need to say it slowly because it's like written in such a way. So video games kind of give you more freedom to do what you feel feels right.
In a typical video game session, you have like the script in front of you only, or like a character idea, but like the director will tell you what's going on and stuff, or they won't, and you'll just be running down the page. But
and they'll be like, okay, just do an A read and a B read. So like you say, I want to get some pancakes, and then you have to go, I want to get some pancakes. Like, so like 2 different reads.
So they can pick. Whereas with anime, like we have the visuals in front of us and the script, and so we're matching the timing of the visuals. Like you might give a great read, but it's too long, so you have to do it again and do it quicker. Where a video game, generally you don't have to, unless it's like a cutscene that they've already animated and you have to match the timing for that.
The client might come in and be like, hey, can we get that again, but can you say pancakes? Or like something weird. And you're like, okay.
So you guys have been mentioning matching flaps a lot right now. So is that the number one thing for anime, is to match that flap?
I mean, ADR, so ADR is, I mean, I feel like it means 2 different things, but like, what is it? Automated dialogue replacement is the.
Oh, I thought it was additional dialogue replacement. Huh.
Yeah, right. There's like 5 different things out there, but generally what it means is you're adding dialogue to a scene in one way or another.
And I think the idea is that it's called automated because usually it's like you have beeps and then you do your loop, and then like so there's like a process to it, method of like it being automated.
Sure, but anime is ADR, and there's plenty of other projects that are ADR as well that aren't anime, but in the world of ADR, timing is very important because the visuals and timing of whatever project you're working on are set in stone. They are done. You're adding the voice to it after the fact, so you cannot go too long or too short, or it will not work. Whereas, like we said with the video game, that's kind of not the case. Like usually, I don't know, I imagine like a RPG, you hit X and this character's mouth moves the whole time that the waveform is playing of the person talking, and then when it's over they stop moving and the game waits until you hit X again to play the next thing. So
yeah,
like, it
that's a
doesn't
pretty
matter how long
common
it is.
thing in games nowadays,
Right.
too.
So yes, it's very important, but I mean the primary, it's important. I would say that's the most important thing when differentiating ADR from other types of voiceover, but the most important thing with any type of voiceover is acting. So really, I would say acting, but if we're talking about differentiating different types of voiceover ADR, yes, timing is very important. So matching flap is a way to say that. We're not always matching flap. Sometimes a character's head is facing the other direction, and it's just like, all right, started around here and ended around here. But it's timing, basically.
And like some different studios will do the timing differently, and that might make it like tighter or not as tight. But American audiences do expect a bit more of flap matching than some Japanese audiences. Like if you watch a subtitle anime, you might be busy reading subtitles, so you might not notice, but a lot of times the Japanese isn't actually lining up much to the animation. But in America, like we're so used to like our Simpsons and our Family Guys where they are timed out to the mouth. So when that doesn't happen, it's like, whoa, what was that? Their mouth was closed. I don't know where'd that come from? And so we try to make that not the case.
Well, I remember in the old days, for you youngins, when they used to have the old kung fu movies, the sync was so out of whack that you just couldn't. They talked for 2 seconds and the voices just kept on going because they didn't care.
Yeah, and that's live action's really hard to dub and make look good because the mouth movements are so specific. Anime is very just like that's all you get. You have closed, half open, and open, and there's no like shapes. Sometimes there are, but very rarely. So that's always gonna look weird. But in terms of like a guy saying yes and then his mouth moving for like 5 seconds afterwards, that could just be a better script. You could just make him take longer to affirm whatever's happening.
So you actually mentioned something before that I always like to hit on with voice acting, because for some reason, people always find that voice acting is something less than actual acting. So you mentioned number one would be the acting part. So how much acting goes into your choices for picking roles, for doing the job? Like, can you explain how that is so important in the gigs you do?
Well, we don't really get to pick our roles ever. We are lucky if we get to audition for something. And then if we audition for like 5 characters, they might pick someone else that we didn't read for that we get to play. And that's it. So we don't have much say in what we get to do. We just, when we're given the opportunity, try our best to do it. But I would argue acting is the most important part of it all. Everything we do is colored by acting because it is acting. Even if it's a character that's in a situation that's already written and set in stone, it's really not a lot different from doing a play. You know, a Shakespearean play, you're not going to change what happens in the play. The character is going to be dramatic and then die. Like no matter what, if you're that role, that's what it's going to be. So our dog is playing with her toy right here. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's very, I don't know, it's the most important part. It's the part that I focus on the most. What are you doing? When like, I don't know, if I'm doing an audition or something, it's like I'll pay attention to like the character's age and imagine where the voice should sit, but like the acting is the most important part, the one thing I focus on the most.
Yeah, and like how different choices you make can inform that. Like, oh, this character is a kid. I'm gonna change like where I let my mouth sit,
right.
And like try to bring more innocence to the role. Or if it's like a boy who's like more sinister, I'll try to bring that in like the way the darkness of my tonality and the way I move through that script is going to be different than a character who's like innocent and not planning something terrible. And what?
I just said it was saying right.
Yeah. Like, so like I could play a character in the same pitch or the same voice, but what will really decide how that character sets apart from other characters is going to be the acting behind it, the choices I make based on anything from their physical features and like the way they're animated, their like hair color or eye color or facial expressions or like their background if I know it or how other people are talking to them in the scene, what the person just said beforehand, what their obstacles and their goals are out of the scene, and that'll change it so like the character is more independent than just a voice.
Right. When I think about it too, this will make sense if you know these characters, but I think about where I place a sound, and you can get such different characters by using the exact same voice placement, just by like acting how the character should act, making different acting choices. Like I think about my Dr. Stone character and my Frank's character and my Attack on Titan character. All of them are kind of in the same vocal range, but they sound different because they're all going through such drastically different things. Like one is goofy and really fun, and the other's like very somber and serious, and the other's like in a life-threatening, like screaming his head off situation, like very emotional, and it's the same type of voice, but the choices of, my choices are being informed by the character and the script and the director and the animation and everything,
and the world they're all in.
Exactly.
Like the world that Chrome inhabits is so different than the world that Hito that inhabits versus the world that Flock inhabits.
Yeah, for sure. So,
and those exterior like influences affect your character choices.
Absolutely.
As well.
So it's the acting is the separator between those characters. Otherwise they'd all sound the same. They'd all just sound like this guy. They'd all sound like him, and that would suck. So because then people watch these shows and be like, that's the same guy. People pick that out anyway, but like it's not immediately like, I've heard this 1,000 times before. What is this? Your choices are what differentiate the characters. So.
And to elaborate on that, the fact that you do acting gives you the ability to make those choices.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm not going to say I don't know if I would be hired if I wasn't an actor, because the thing I always think is that like you can get hired to do an acting job even if you can't act like one or two times, but like if you could make a career out of it, it means you're an actor. But like, yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't be getting those opportunities if I wasn't an actor, so.
And I feel like the choices you make are part of being an actor.
For sure. Yeah.
Like a good actor will make clear choices between the moments and like define their scene beats. And like if you go and watch something and you're like, man, I don't really like this product, like think for a second, are they making choices? Are they taking risks? Are they doing anything besides just reading out loud? Right. Because a lot of the things I don't like, but I'm like, man, what is it that I don't like about this character or this story? Like other people say that it's endearing, but I don't feel it. A lot of times when I go back, I'm like, oh, it's because the person isn't making choices. They're not doing anything to endear me to this character, bring life to this character. So the character isn't alive to me.
All right, so let's see. We have a question in the chat. So just everybody who is listening to us, you can type your questions in the chat, and I will read it. Even if it's comments, I will read it because I'm cool like that. From Hannah Cole, it says, I do wonder if Funi will use the new PGB product dubbing style that they use for PS5.
I know
P5A.
what that's referring to.
Yeah.
That's referring to the Persona 5 anime that was recently done at the same studio that the Persona 5 game was done at, which is PCB Productions. And they said that they didn't use traditional dubbing or traditional ADR. I also was like, what? And they haven't said what it is. Yeah. I'm like, what does that mean? The more I thought about it, the more I'm like, I bet there was just like some tweak that they found in the process that they prefer in some way. I doubt it's like significantly different, because between the two of us, the amount of different ways we've dubbed shows, it's like every studio has their own way of doing it, but it's all in one way. They play the video and you act and you hope it fits.
My guess, based on like having done Maple Story with PCB, is that it might be like where they play the audio and then I'm just supposed to repeat the audio but in English.
Could be.
Because that's what we did for the Maple Story cutscenes. And in that case, like you match the audio, but for, like I said before, Japanese often doesn't even match the animation.
Yeah. So matching the Japanese audio wouldn't necessarily mean you're matching the animation.
I feel like it's just kind of risky because like some shows they're pretty good about it and some shows they're not.
I think about King's Game, the animation all the time. The flaps in that show in the Japanese side of things were like all over the place. We made it way tighter when we were acting in that show.
Yeah, it's kind of a gamble.
Yeah.
So let's see.
There's other studios that are like, oh, you're just gonna chase it in English. You'll hear the Japanese and you just start talking. and we'll line it up later.
Yep, and there are other studios where you never hear the Japanese ever. You just they say, here's your line, go, and you do it, and you hope it fits, and if it doesn't, you do it again. And then there are studios where you sit there and you do it only line by line. You can only do one line at a time, even if that's half a sentence. And other studios are like, let's do a few pages. So they're all different.
Everyone's different.
I would be interested to hear what that is if they ever like go tell people that. But I mean, my guess is that it's probably something like that. It's just like their own preferred style of the typical thing.
All right, so let's see. Also in the chat, Pat Drennan says, I have watched a show where it all was one voice. Dear Lord, that was a hard 12 episode to watch called Ashanti Akanato. No longer can find it, but it was a good storyline. Have you guys heard of that one?
No, I want to look it up though, because like, what's the story if it's one actor? Ashanti.
So while you're looking that up, let's do some technical stuff. So for people who are at home and need to try to get work, what kind of equipment do you guys have for a studio, home studio?
I would not recommend anyone buying the stuff we have. We have spent a lot of money between the two of us on this studio.
Okay, so what's the bare minimum then?
Well, it depends. For people just starting, you don't need the highest quality stuff because you're probably not going to be reading for stuff that's going to require like absolute broadcast or international theatrical quality audio. So I don't know if I have a mic off the top of my head, but I don't know. What would you recommend?
Well, it's tough. It's like really tough on like what, because a lot of people who ask this question, they're not asking it like, what do I need to get started? They're like, what do I need so I can be working professionally?
And it's like, what you need is like 5 figures cost, like it's going to be a serious investment. So like, it's not really recommended to dive in like that. And you're also going to like renovate part of your house to make a recording space.
Because like a lot of the auditions now that we're in COVID land where no one goes into a studio, they'll be like, okay, well, you need to have either a U87 microphone or a TLM 103 or a Sennheiser 416 or something equivalent to one of those 3. Now those 3 microphones will cost you anywhere between $1,000 and like $4,000.
Wow.
And then in order to make those microphones work, you need to plug it into an audio interface or a preamp. Sometimes they're devices that are both. Sometimes you need both. But you need something that provides 48 volts of phantom power to power your microphone, and connecting your microphone to that box, you'll need an XLR cable. Popular like interfaces or preamps include the SSL2, which is really popular and pretty cost effective, or the UA Apollo. There are some budget friendly items out there as well.
But those are like
most of our professional peers are using, and that are dubbing from home right now, are using one of those 2 items.
And those are like $700. What's the SSL? Like
400 maybe. So you're looking between $400 and $800, and then you need the cable to connect it, and then you're gonna need
professional quality headphones. So you can make sure that
so these are like $150 each.
We literally just bought another pair of these right before this because I used them earlier, and I'm like, I want to use these headphones.
Yeah, I love these. I like them. And then you're gonna need a computer that you can record on that has enough memory on it to run multiple programs, because right now for ADR you're going to need a program that can screen share, and you're going to need a recording program to record a backup or engineer yourself, and you're going to need a program that connects your audio to the client's audio. Right now most people are using either Source Connect Now or Source Connect Standard. One is free but has its own problems, and one costs like $1,000. And then Pro Tools costs several hundred to thousands of dollars depending on the version you buy. And then
that's a DAW, like
GarageBand.
Yeah,
would be.
like a program to record into. Pro Tools is the professional standard for dubbing, but it's also the professional standard for a lot of like music stuff. But we use it just for our primary recordings as we have.
And then you're gonna.
So you need a mic stand. That's $20 from.
Yeah, you're gonna get a stand. You might need a headphone adapter depending on your setup. You might need you're gonna need internet, and you need good internet to send all of that. You're gonna need Ethernet cable. So there's a lot of costs, and that doesn't even start the like soundproofing you need.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Like, what about that?
A soundproof area is more important than the microphone.
Yeah.
There's people who have been like, I have this really great microphone. And I'm like, oh, cool. I know what that microphone should sound like. It should sound very good. And I listen to a sample and I'm like, wow, it sounds like you're in a tin can.
Yeah.
So like we have something called a whisper room, which is a product you can buy, US made in like Tennessee.
Yeah.
Nashville,
They'll
I
ship
think.
it to you on a
pallet,
and you have to put it together, and it's very heavy.
Yeah.
That's
So
what
we
it's
have
gonna
that.
price.
Another popular one is something called Studio Bricks, which I think looks awesome because
Yeah,
they look like
cool.
fancy Legos and they look really sleek. Ours is like this fuzzy room, basically. A whisper room is like kind of like this fuzzy material.
And then inside that whisper room, we have more soundproofing because it's not like flawless, even though it's, you know, $7,000+ for the whisper room.
Yeah.
Like it's not flawless in its own. You have to get more soundproofing inside.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that goes into like the professional standard right now.
Yeah, and like some people find hacks by using closets and putting lots and lots of foam in there and using audio like soundproofing curtains. There's another thing called vocal booth to go that some people have had good experiences with, or isovox is another thing, but all these still cost like a lot of money. So the like, what do I need to be professionally doing this?
You need a lot of money.
You need a good amount of money. If you're just looking to like dabble in doing some podcasting or things online, you could start with a simple like plug and play USB mic. Popular ones include like the Blue Yeti or the AT2020. A lot of popular streaming mics now often started as mics that I would be telling people to use for starting voiceover gigs.
Yeah.
A lot of people like this interface called the Scarlett, but I would much over that I would recommend the SSL2 because it's got a cleaner sound and it's just a little bit more expensive than most of those. And you can then get like another sort of USB mic, or sorry, XLR mic. AT2020 has a one step higher that is XLR. I know quite a few people that use the Rode NT1A, I think it's called, and that has like it's not a super expensive mic, but it has a sound that can be worked with. There's some Shure microphones that I don't remember the number attached to it that are pretty good.
I think that's probably enough.
Yeah. You can find recommendations online on exact things, but like you're definitely going to need soundproofing more than anything else to make that mic sound like it's worth more than it is.
To call back to what we talked about before, that is an absolute advantage to being a couple in this industry, is all of those costs are split down the middle. Because you know, like it's not like we were just like, cool, let's just spend this money. That was something that, like, I don't know, the first 3 years of my professional career, which is 7 years after I started pursuing doing VO at all, I was working like regular retail jobs, saving up money. And then I was like, okay, I have some money, I can invest in like this high quality stuff. And we didn't even need this high quality stuff in the beginning to do like local VO. It's now that the world is in this pandemic state that it's so advantageous for us to have it. We have this stuff because we are also, you know, directors and engineers, and we are on that side of production as well. So we can, like, before times, we could have actors come in to a studio and record something here, and that's part of our project. So not all of it is necessary to I guess not all of it is necessary, but right now in the world we're in, it's very good to have. It's also very expensive. So like, you know, a lot of our peers don't have this level of equipment, but
or they have been forced to invest
that way.
Like there's a lot of people who've been forced to invest because of COVID.
Yes. So it's a tricky situation, but like, you know, typically you would, if you live in like where we are, going to Funimation or something, or if you live in LA, you go to a bunch of different studios, like the equipment's in the studio. You don't need that. You need something to get started and to audition from home, but to record the actual product, you wouldn't need it. But right now we do, so.
And speaking of studios, I can say personally that when we were in the studio before, you know, the apocalypse happened, the sound, you can't automatically tell how different you sound just hearing yourself running through the mic and the headphones. It's an amazing thing, the difference that the sound is. So when you're listening to other things, because you just said it yourself, Brittnay, how you know how certain microphones sound. So at what point you're like, all right, this sounds right. How do you know when you're there?
Experience.
I mean,
feel
yeah, I
like.
think it's experience and like being used to like, okay, I'm working with like I'm not like a super pro audio techie person. I can't tell you like just from hearing like, oh, that microphone.
Yeah.
But if I'm told like this is the microphone and I listen to it and I can tell if it doesn't sound right.
Right.
Like there's muddier sound to it's not as clear, it's not as clean, or I can hear like the reflection of like, oh, their space isn't right, or the hiss or the compression or something that sounds like additional post-processing, or like I think the biggest thing to me is when I hear the lack of clarity. Like I'm like, oh, this person in real life has a certain vocal texture that their microphone is not conveying, and so it loses what is their like vocal imprint, like what makes them bookable or what makes me think of them, and I can't hear it anymore. And that to me is like, oh, I wish they had a better mic, or I wish they had better equipment. Or I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be this really good microphone, but it sounds like it's compressed. And I'm like, oh, did you compress this audio? And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, okay, there's something wrong there. What could it be? Is it the space? Is it the interface, the preamp, etc.?
It's definitely experience. You kind of get used to it, but I would say, at least for myself, like the turning point was when I took a class at some studio and we recorded stuff and they like sent the MP3 home and I listened to it versus what I could record from my own, like at the time, really bad setup. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So this is like clean professional quality. This is what I'm striving for. What I have is nothing compared to that. But if you've never heard your own voice in that situation before, you might just go, that sounds nice because it's got like a bass to it or something. But like if it's artificially being added, it might sound strange, you know? So you kind of just develop an ear for it, I guess, is the real answer. But I do feel like the first time I really noticed was when I like heard myself recorded on a good professional mic in a soundproof studio instead of like in my basement, like where I was recording when I was 15. So there's not really an answer. You kind of just have to listen over and over again and get used to it.
More questions from the chat. Shiny EV cosplayer asked, are you really hyped up for Dr. Stone season 2?
Yes. Can you pass me my gun? I have a gun finger puppet.
I have a chrome one, which is my character, but he's in the other room.
So looking forward to that January.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see. John Jordanis says, did you two meet because of work, and how long have you been in the biz?
We actually met we both wanted to do voiceover.
Yes.
And some mutual friends were like, oh, I know someone who also wants to do that. But we were in high school. We both grew up on Long Island, and in New York, and we both met in our high school, Harbor Fields. And we dated in high school, and then we broke up for a little while, and we got back together, and now we're doing it professionally.
That's married.
That's so sweet. You guys are high school sweethearts.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah. So like in a weird way, people introduced us because we were like the two people who independently were like, I want to do voiceover, that they knew, but like our interests aligned anyway. So like we would have run into each other at some point anyway,
probably,
because we would like have the same, we'd go to the same club at school or something like that. Yeah, so.
Okay, so I saw Kelly's hand go up. So does that mean you have a question from the YouTube, Kelly? Or not? Okay, I guess not. So I saw a hand. Oh, there we go.
No, it just that the story, it was so sweet. Just like you said. That's why I put in my hands. Very cool. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there anything you guys wanted to do beyond voice acting? Like when you were back in high school, you're like, I want to do something else. Or was it always voice acting? This is what I want to do. And how did you just get that seed to want to be voice actors?
I wanted to do acting since I was young. And I had a negative experience trying to pursue that, where I took some acting workshops and I was trying to like pursue it more as a teenager, and I rehearsed a monologue from The Crucible, which is not exactly what you would expect a middle school student to be rehearsing. And I performed it in front of agents during a showcase, and my feedback was about how I had glasses and braces, and I was pretty upset by that. So I was like, I'm never gonna act. When? And then a few years later, as someone who's always been into anime and games, I found myself on YouTube looking up stuff about those anime and games, and I found out that it was a profession to voice behind those, and I was like, well, that's so cool. So I started looking on Google and trying to figure out anything I could about what being a voice actor entailed, and I joined online communities, and I started to like record myself with a rock band mic and like try to figure out what the heck voiceover would be, and started to meet other people in the area that were into it, such as Matt, or other people that like we met at like anime conventions who also wanted to do voiceover, and like started to do like original projects online, and do whatever I could as practice, and eventually that led to a friend of mine who had done professional work, was like, oh, this studio in New York is looking for new actors. Are you interested? And I was like, heck yeah. And he sent them my information, and I auditioned for an anime they were working on, and I didn't book it. And then a few months later, I auditioned for another anime they were doing, which was called Queen's Blade Rebellion, and I did book it, and that was my first anime that I did. And then I was like, I'm gonna keep on doing that. So yeah, there's my TLDR of that.
Was it, sorry, I like, as I heard your story, I'm like, this is your like origin story, but was that was the question like how we got into
Yes,
like,
yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So for me, oh, right, okay.
And if there was anything else you wanted to do.
Anything else you want to do? I
Can I help you?
Our dog is like, pay attention.
The dog wants to answer the question.
Yeah.
For me, there wasn't really anything else I wanted to do, and by that I meant that I kind of wanted to do everything. Yeah, this is our dog Raven. She's our studio dog, which means we kick her out when we have to record because she will make noise. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. There was nothing that I felt like I wanted to do like more than anything else. And I think acting came along as a way to kind of be like, well, I can do literally everything. I don't actually get the experience of doing all those things, but I kind of get the mental experience of it, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I've played a cop, so it's like I have an idea, like in my head, I'm like, I've gotten to pretend to be a cop for a while, and I've played like a superhero, and it's like I've gotten to pretend to be a superhero. Not that that's a job, but you know, like whatever the characters that I'm playing is a scientist, exactly. Like that is what I am in that moment. So I feel like I get to be everything as long as I get to be in enough projects that, like, you know, if I'm a firefighter or like a pilot or something, like I get to be all of those things in a weird way, in a weird, incomplete, not real way. So I don't know. I just ended up wanting to do VO because I learned what it was. It was like, I was watching TV with a friend of mine, and a trailer for Bleach, an anime, came on TV, and my friend, I guess, had watched the subbed version of it online at some point prior to that, so he heard the trailer and he's like, I don't like what they do with the main guy's voice. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, like I'm just like sitting there processing what is, I guess there are different right, it's a different language, so it's got to be a different voice. So like so is there a person who sits there and like speaks, and that's their job, like they act for the character? And then like once I like figured that out and like made that realization, you know, I was young, I was like what, 13 or 14 or something. Like I just hadn't thought about it. Then I looked into it and I'm like, this seems really cool, I'd love to do this. So I, similarly to Brittnay, like figured out what to do via the internet and like networked with people for years. And then at some point I found myself at, you know, an audition in New York City, because we lived in New York. It was an audition that you had recommended me for, and I didn't book that, but I was in the studio, and then I got an email from someone from at 4K Media. I had read for their show recently. They were working on Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, and like I got an email that was like, hey, we need you to record this audition from home. We'll tell you if you book it tomorrow, and then the next day you'll have to come in if you book it. And it was like a main character, and I'm like, all right. So I went home and I recorded it, and then the next day on my way to my retail job at Apple, I stopped to get gas, and I had an email that said I booked it, and I was like, okay. So then the next day, luckily I had off for my retail job. I didn't have to get anyone to cover. So I went in and I recorded it. And it's like, that was the start of my career. Then I'm like, hey, I'm in Yu-Gi-Oh for like 100 episodes and I'm a main character. I do this professionally now. It's easier to, at that point, once you've done something that people recognize or you can point to that says, look, I'm a professional. It's easier to speak to other professionals and say, I would like to work with you. So that's how that happened.
So let's see. From the chat, we have Kelly Gordon says, what would be your dream job to do? Voiceover at Marvel and DC, one character each, and why? I guess that's two questions. What would be your dream job? And would you want to do voiceover at Marvel and or DC? And pick one character.
I really like Batgirl, so I've always liked her. I've always thought she was really cool. So I guess that would be my DC dream job. I have a few Batgirl statues. One that's signed by Babs Tarr because it was her version of Batgirl of Burnside. And dream role aside from that, I've always wanted to do like a Shonen Jump protagonist person. I've always thought that would be cool. But a lot of them are boys, and nowadays, instead of having them voiced by women like they did back in the day, they're voiced by actual guys. So
I feel like some of them are older now too.
Yeah,
they're like 17 instead of like 13. So the age.
Like I always really liked Suna from Detective Hitman Reborn, which is an older Shonen Jump title. And he was and still is like my dream role. But at this point,
that was voiced by a girl.
That was voiced by a woman. But I don't think that's ever gonna get up. But that would be up there. Shaman King's getting a remake though, so. Or Tokyo Mew Mew was another thing I loved when I was younger.
My dream job is voiceover, so I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, of course, I will take like. Listen, it's a gig to gig thing. We will take almost any work, but of course we'd love to work for Marvel or DC. They're huge, you know. As for like specific characters, I mean, I feel like these are like standard answers because they're very popular characters, but like I'm not much of a comic guy. I enjoy Marvel and DC stuff that are animated and like, you know, like the cinematic universes. Are you gonna start barking now? We're gonna start. But so like, I mean, there already are people associated with these, but like, I don't know, Spider-Man would be cool. And I guess if I really have to pick someone in the DC universe that like my voice range could match, I guess Robin. Like, I'm not gonna be Batman, you know, unless it's like Batman Beyond or something, like young Batman. So them, I guess.
To put you on the spot, because we're running out of time, can you do an improv between Robin and Batgirl like right now? Just a quick couple lines of each other?
No. No, we can't. I don't even know. I don't know anything about that character. Like there's so many. There's like 5 different, like Dick Grayson and I don't know, one of the other 3. Like I don't know the history behind them enough to do that. Yeah. It would just sound like a conversation between us, except it would be more serious because I guess in that world we'd be like, okay, we're going on a mission, like whatever. You know?
Yeah, or like I have a year 1 comic where they're kids, but like I hate improv.
Yeah, me too. I know improv. Scripts. I need the script.
I do not like doing it. I do not like doing Walla voices where it's improv. Like
Walla's like group recording improv. For like background stuff.
Yeah, like I'd rather have like even if it's like a skeletal idea of it, like it's so much better than just going in and being told, okay, now do the thing. And
you're in a school. What are you talking about in the school? My go-to is always I forgot to do the homework last night, and I forgot my like textbook in my locker is always what I go to. I could talk about those for like minutes.
Yeah.
There's an old school. Like,
no, don't make me do that.
There's an old school rule of thumb: if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage.
That's pretty much.
There's some people I know who are like fantastic at improv. I'm just not.
Yeah, give me a sentence and all. I could like improv off of like a situation that's totally given to me, but like I have to know everything about the situation. Yeah. You know, so.
All right,
I feel like that comes from like our perspective on like what acting is, where it's like, well, I want to like know the before and the
how
after.
Can I live in the moment if I don't know who the person I'm speaking to is and where we are and all this stuff? You know, like so.
All right, so okay, we have about like 10 minutes to go. So I want to hit the important stuff. Where can people find you, contact you, get jobs, audition, all that fun stuff? Social media time is now.
I'm on Twitter at Brittnay Lauda VO, and that's probably the social media I'm most active on. I'm on Instagram at BrieLoud. I have a Facebook fan page. I just kind of share stuff on it. I don't really use it. So like if people send me messages on there, I'm probably not going to see it.
I feel like I want to point out real quick that despite Brittnay Lauda being her handle, her last name is Lauda.
Yeah.
Just because that's such a typical thing and it's a play on that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just thought I'd say that.
Twitter is probably my most used place. I tweet a lot. I tweet back and forth with people, retweet things. If you're someone who's like interested in voiceover, our website coachessound.com has like if you're someone who is a professional voice actor and you're watching this and you're like, I want to audition for them, coachessound.com has a link on there to a Google form where you can fill out all of your information. Professional voice actors only, please, because if you don't have a home setup and you don't have a demo reel or a resume, there's not much I can do for you. And at Coaches Sound is our like company Twitter.
I'm at Matt Shipman VO on Twitter. That's also my social media of choice. I have an Instagram. It's just at Matt Shipman. Somehow I snagged that early on enough, I guess. And then I sat on it for years and started using it like, I don't know, at the start of Frank's like 2 years ago. But I don't use it too often, but I do check it pretty regularly. And then I have a Facebook page too, Matt Shipman voice actor, but that also doesn't get updated super often. So Twitter is usually the place to go for me.
We also stream on Twitch at Matt and Brittnay. Hannah is there often.
Brittnay, not Brittnay.
Yeah.
Brinnny.
I'll put it here. But
this is kind of whenever we feel like it. It evolved out of the pandemic. Because we needed something to do, and we're always interested in that. But that's not like
So
mostly right now we play a lot of Fall Guys on it, and we do rotating streams with other voice actors where we play Jackbox or Among Us with a group of like 8 to 10 other actors, which is always really fun.
all right, so Brittnay, since you mentioned professional voice actors wanting a job, what are the qualities you look for in a demo reel or something in that effect?
Well, I definitely look for a demo reel, period. There's a lot of people who are like, I don't have a demo. And I'm like, well, I can't really do anything.
Then I don't know what you sound like. I don't know what your acting's like.
But I look for acting first and foremost, that you're making choices and taking risks, not falling into like super cliche things or really stereotypical things. A friend of mine was talking to me about how they were going over demos with someone else recently, and they're like, do you know how many people put record scratches into their demos? I'm like, probably the same amount of people who are like doing like hacker voice, we're in, like or like stuff like that, robots and stuff. There's
if you hear that like 700 times in one day as you're going through 700 demos, it's going to be like, no, it's just going to bother the casting director at that point. You're not doing yourself any favors by doing the same thing that everyone else does.
Not doing impressions is important. I don't want to hear someone trying to be Todd Habercorn
or Stewie Griffin.
Or Stewie Griffin.
They can get those actors if they want them.
A lot of people kind of shoot themselves in the foot by using material that's copyrighted, and it's not necessarily the copyright that's wrong, but it's that those have like an established like recognizable attachment to them already, so it comes with an expectation. So like if you're using like some sort of Marvel music, I'm already in the mindset of Marvel and it's working against you because I'm like, oh, this was used when this iconic scene happened, and you're using it and not living up to that moment. Or like if you're using a piece like lines and background music from like an Attack on Titan scene, I'm like, I could just hire J. Michael Tatum who did this scene.
Right.
So like it works against you instead of for you. So using things that are original, that aren't going to get you compared to someone else is really important, because then I won't compare you, even subconsciously. I'll be like, oh, this is like a really cool original thing that this person did.
It's always possible that someone will hear something like that and think, oh, you were in that, huh? That was you? And then they'll go and check and be like, oh, no, you weren't. So why is this in here? You know, like, because you can just grab something from professional work you've done and put that in a demo too. Not that that always sounds the best, but it is a thing that's done. So
and like
that might come off as like lying, I guess.
You can take something from a pre-existing media and just change it.
Yes.
Like like, oh, I really like this monologue from this thing. So take that monologue as your skeletal structure and then change it. Like, put in your own spin on it.
Change the nouns, change some of the adjectives.
Yeah,
like
or
change the
decide like I
situation.
want this, but I'm gonna place it in this scenario instead. How does that change it?
Right.
So yeah, I want to hear authentically you making choices.
And how long should a demo be?
I'm a little flexible on it. There's some people who are like, no more than 1 minute. If it's a good demo and it's like a minute and 30 seconds, I'll listen to it.
I've always heard I've heard people say it has to be under a minute, and then I've heard people say it has to be under a minute and a half, and it's like, okay, so then a minute, I guess, fulfills both those requirements. But yeah, it's kind of personal preference. Like, different casting directors are gonna go like, how could you be a minute and 1 second? I'm deleting this, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah,
But
I'll listen to as long as I am impressed by it.
The reality is that generally, if you send a demo somewhere, unless that's the only demo that person's hearing that day, which it's probably not, they're probably not going to listen to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So you want to put the strongest stuff up front, because that'll catch them and go, oh, okay, what else can they do? And then they'll listen further, rather than putting like a bad impression up front. They'll go delete. If that's your best stuff, then I don't need to waste 59 more seconds. I can use that to listen to someone else, because I have all these other demos sitting here.
All right, so we're almost out of time, so we have our final thoughts, but there's 2 comments in the chat I want to get to. So John Jordanus says, there's a line that goes, you have a great face for radio. I wanted to say that doesn't fit you guys. You guys make a great couple.
Thank you.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Yeah.
There is an equivalent for that in voiceover, and people often come up to us and say, everyone always tells me I should do radio, and it's not that. It's what they mean is, I've got this great sound, and it's like, cool. Can you use that sound at all? Can you act at all? Because I know plenty of people who have like a cool voice, but if they can't act, then it's useless. So if someone, generally when someone comes up to a professional actor and goes, I was told I should get into voiceover, it's immediately in your head, your eyes are rolling. It's like, all right, do you care about acting at all? The most important part, or do you think you have a cool voice?
Yeah, it's funny because like I haven't heard that like you have a great face for radio saying, but I hear people come up to us all the time and say, someone told me I have a really good voice for radio and voiceover.
I think it's different because the implication is like, oh, you've got a good face for radio. I mean, you can sound great, but your face, you don't want on cameras, right? Yeah. But the other thing is them saying, you've got a great sound no matter what. But it really doesn't matter. Like, there are plenty of roles. Like, I don't know, I sound like a regular dude, but there's a lot of roles for regular dudes. You don't need to have a cool voice. You just need to act. So sorry to derail that.
No worries. I just want to make sure we got to that before we ran out of time. And one final question, so then we'll have your 2 final thoughts. Last question is from Pat Drennan. What about costumes or cosplaying? Have you liked any of the characters you have voiced throughout playing them, or as cosplaying them? Have you ever thought about cosplaying as your characters?
I haven't cosplayed. I did like a faux cosplay of my character Audrey from Honey Pop for an event at a local comic store in New York called Escape Pod Comics in Huntington Village. If you've not gone, it's a really cool place.
Shout out.
And I dressed up as Audrey there. I also dressed up as Pinkie Pie for some events there, and I do voice matching as Pinkie Pie for Hasbro, so that's like a fun thing. But I have a dress of Ichigo's from Darling in the Franxx. I got a custom-made Kigurumi dress of her plug suit, and those are both like cool, fun things. But I haven't committed to a full costume of hers.
When I was younger, cosplayed. I think at some point I said to myself, do I want to be someone who cosplays who then gets into voiceover? Like, wow, this cosplayer does voiceover. Or do I want to be a voice actor who maybe someday does a cosplay? And I was like, that one, I want that. So I kind of stopped for a while. And then of course, the first few things I booked were like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the hair and the outfit is insane. So I was like, well, I'm not doing that, because that would be thousands of dollars to make that look good. And I mean, I just haven't done it in a while since. But
when are we going to see you in heels for your Chrome cosplay?
In heels? It's just it's like one shoe rock still thing. I mean, I put on a lab coat once to jokingly be Chrome. He doesn't actually wear a lab coat in the show. It's just in shots where they modernize it for a second. But Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of guys that are easy. I would love to like wear what Inasa wears in My Hero, but like it's so complicated. I can't.
What about Attack on Titan?
That's easy because you could just buy
Buy
the standard
yeah.
Attack on Titan thing, and then I just need like a V-neck blue shirt, I think is what he wears under it. But like, then I need my hair to be red.
Your hair is close enough to the
Yeah.
box.
All right, so final thought time. So we're at the end of the show, so I want to thank you guys for coming. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience or people who might be listening to this in the future?
Well, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
If you're someone aspiring to do VO, I hope we didn't scare you too much.
Yeah.
There's so much good information online, though. There's like so many great websites if you're looking to be a voice actor. D. Bradley Baker has I Want to Be a Voiceactor.com. Tara Platt and Yuri Lowenthal have a book.
Voiceover, voice actor.
Yeah.
I have a little blurb in there in volume 2.
So
or
like,
edition 2 or something.
Yeah, and then there's a voice acting club, which is a website that has tons of great resources, auditions, stuff like that. So if you are aspiring and we scared you a little bit by telling you how much it costs to get into voiceover and things like that, please go check out those things and start getting educated. If you put a lot of work towards it, and you really want to do it in your heart, I believe in you. You can do it.
Also, because I don't know that we said it enough, take classes, like acting classes, because that's really important.
Other than that, watch Dr. Stone whenever it comes back.
Season 2.
Love Dr. Stone. And
That's
all I
it?
got.
Yeah, and thanks for hanging. Thanks for
All right, so thank you guys very much for being guests on the 10th annual EMCON Anime Fest 2020 Zoom panel. I really appreciate you guys. As I said, you guys are such a cute couple. It's so sweet, and you guys are really cool. I really appreciate you taking the time out for us. Make sure you guys always check out eastmetal.info because the public library has tons of programs, and if you guys really like this stuff, go there, check them out, go register for their programs. That way they can have more times, and we can always have Brittnay and Matt come back for more stuff, and we'll give them a Batman and a Batgirl script, and then they'll actually act it out. It'd be awesome.
Maybe.
Kelly's applauding for that one.
And also, I just want to mention my radio show is It Came From the Radio, so this will be on the YouTube page, itcamefromradio.com, so if you guys want to check us out as well. So thank you very much. Kelly, do you have any final thoughts, or we are good?
Everybody just stay, I'm like tongue-tied here. Just everybody stay safe and healthy, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Brittnay, Matt, I really appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us. And I would love to have you guys come and hang out with us in-house when next time we get to do that.